Now, usually I spend my time on the Byteside podcast chatting to creatives or engineers about things they've been hard at work building for the future. So on the surface, maybe it's a little strange to say we're here and I'm excited to talk to two people from the Wizards of the Coast marketing team. But for me, Greg, Tito and Shelley Mazzanoble come to the show with that same sense of creative energy. As the co-hosts of the Dragontalk, the official Dungeons & Dragons podcast, they do a lot more than just talk about the latest news and new release updates about the game. They spent 7 or so years and 350 episodes becoming part of the heartbeat of D&D, interviewing the team behind the scenes and introducing us to guests from across the worldwide community that really deepens our shared love of the game and everybody around it. The podcast has been so wonderful. They are just about to release a book about the Dragontalk podcast and the lessons they've learned about the game, about life, the universe, and everything else. Greg, Shelley, thank you so much for joining us on Byteside.
Thanks for having us. This is
what
great.
A wonderful introduction, by the way. Thank you.
Look, I'll get into how long I've been listening in a little bit, but I've been listening back to kind of some of the old episodes. And I noticed that going right back to kind of D&D Next was where the podcast did kick off before the release of 5th edition. But early on, there was that rotating cast of Dragon Talkers. And then how did kind of you arrive at the show and how did you push all those other people aside to make it your own?
We had to do so much research for this book to determine just that. It was almost like we had a D&D adventurers party going in and try to unearth the history of the Dragontalk podcast.
Yes, it was like a deep dive into Candlekeep to figure out where did this thing start. It was kind of funny because nobody remembers why I was involved, including myself. How I maybe was just squatting in a conference room and they were like, hey, we need this room to record a podcast. And I just was like, cool, I'll just watch you. Nobody really remembers. It's very, very foggy. But yes, you're right. There was a rotating cast and it was kind of, the Dragontalk wasn't really anyone's job. It was kind of something that like a lot of people wanted to do. But because it wasn't a job for anyone and it wasn't anyone's official responsibility, a lot of times people were just like, oh, I have to work today. I can't do it. Or I'm on vacation or whatever. So I guess I never had too much work or was on vacation because I seem to be there. I seem to be there quite a bit. But Greg started at Wizards and his desk was right next to mine. And Greg and I were, becoming friends. I liked him. I thought like he's the communications manager. He would probably be really good on this podcast. Hey, you want to sit in on a podcast? It didn't even have a name at that point. And Greg was like, yes, I do. Sure. And so he came in to also be like the fourth host, but sometimes only the second host, depending on how many people actually showed up for an interview. And then I think, so Bart Carroll was really like integral to getting this thing off the ground, but then he got moved to Magic. So they were like, well, you can't do that D&D thing anymore. Now you work on Magic. And then I think Trevor Kidd just kind of like opted out of doing it, or maybe he took on different responsibilities. And then it was just Greg and I left in the room. And I do very distinctly remember Ryan saying like, I guess you guys are the hosts now.
We're the last people standing. It's true.
You've gotten rid of everybody else. So
I had come from a content creation job previously before I started at Wizards. So I was in that mode of like, oh yeah, let's have regular schedules. Let's get bigger guests so that we can draw more of an audience. Let's name this thing. Let's call it something and get away from the haphazard schedule of posting and try to do it like every week or at the same general time so that fans can start to develop a routine when listening to us. And all those things contributed to, me and Shelley just kind of running with this baton and making Dragontalk what it is. And that was like 2015, 2016. And then we just kept iterating and changing and growing and building more community members coming on and highlighting what they were doing. And that's where it all began.
So look, we're heading towards the 50th anniversary of the game, and we know that 5th edition has been the most successful version of the game ever. So would you say that's all thanks to the amazing work of Dragontalk, or only about 85%?
I'd say
100%.
80, 85 is probably good. Let's not. We're a B minus.
Yeah, you got a little room for all the other people who might work on this.
Yeah, we should probably leave a little room for the actual game designers. But
yeah, I mean, who you highlight on the show.
We normalized them. We made them feel like they were a part of the community, right? And I think,
right.
You're saying that facetiously, but I don't think we particularly had anything to do with it. But I think the culture around Dungeons & Dragons started to shift around that same time, and we were just there to kind of bump it up and make that more apparent to more people. So I don't think we can take all the credit, but I certainly think that changing perspective of what a D&D player was embodied in me and Shelley, because we were not the stereotypical D&D players, and we try to highlight that as much as possible, that we were, we were parents, we had full lives, we had other interests beyond gaming that we brought into the D&D table, and try to highlight those folks in a more professional context, who were storytellers, who were authors, who were also game designers, and try to make it seem like, it is cool to be a part of this community. And I think that fundamental shift is part of what happened and made us be a spoke in the wheel of like streaming and other live play podcasts that kind of came at that same time.
Yeah, I mean, what is it about? I feel like, it makes sense, but I'd love your thoughts on, what is it about the podcast format that does actually work so well to build a connection with a community in this way?
Well, by their very nature, podcasts are just conversational. It's just meant to be just people just talking. And we try to make people feel comfortable, even if they're not experienced with being interviewed. We want it to feel less like hard-hitting journalism. We're not like asking you tough questions. We just want to talk. We are all just fans of this game. We kind of have D&D as the thing that connects us together. And if you have that bond, you can talk to anyone. Like, you can talk to a D&D fan anywhere in the world, and it just levels the playing field for all of us. So we just really try to focus on the things that we're excited about with the work that they're doing, and just, give them that space and that platform to elevate that work and shine that spotlight on them. But I think most of it really just comes from being a D&D fan and just being genuine in that way. That I'll say 99.9% of our Dragontalk guests really love to talk about D&D.
And the format of a talk show is not new, right? That's been around for decades, TV and radio. And I think what podcast did was that allowed, similar to YouTube and to a lesser extent, streaming on Twitch, it kind of allowed people with less resources than big radio stations and big TV production studios to produce content that people could get anywhere, right? And so I think that the podcast medium itself allowed, it be part of our third jobs, right, to do this type of thing. I think we tried with Twitch, we're really successful in creating much more of a larger breadth of more video focused content that included Dragontalk, that included a lot of other things. But we even found just in the small steps that we made there that's very difficult. It's like going up to scale, right? Like, you're like, oh gosh, not only do we have to just have 3 people on a mic and an audio engineer who can get that going, it involves so much more coordination and makeup. We had to wear makeup, and so I think
we
podcasts.
Well, you wouldn't notice, Shelley, but yeah, Greg would.
Nobody powdered my nose.
I had clown makeup mostly, just to look like a fool. But I think the podcast
while you were talking.
Yeah, just putting it on in front of the camera while singing show tunes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, look, obviously you've been putting this book together for a little while. I mean, what was that journey like to actually revisit old episodes and think about the show, I guess, in a new way?
Yes, you're right. Say revisiting it in a new way. For me, it was, I have to admit, it was sometimes the first time I listened to those episodes, because I have a hard time listening to myself, and I just get very anxious about, what did I say? What if I said something terrible and I'm just going to be mad at myself all over again? But, the other part of that, it was actually quite enjoyable. And we picked the essays in the book. There's about 29 of them, I think, in the book. But we picked them for a reason, because these were ones that really stood out to Greg and I personally. There was ones that we had a personal connection to, or we learned something important about ourselves or about the game. But it just, listening to all of these episodes again, there was that one common thread, and it was just how important this game is. And when it's also your day job to market this very important game, it's like you are just constantly reinvigorated with the work that you do, with the community that you support and that you get to be a part of. So for me, it was just like this constant infusion of energy and passion and enthusiasm again. And I got personally excited, just not just for the work we do with D&D, but for the work we do with Dragontalk, and actually helping these, the community members that we got to talk to, helping them kind of elevate their place or actually get the recognition that they deserve. We talked to Christina Ariel years ago when she was just a brand new streamer. And now look at her. Like she's done so many tremendous things in this, in this industry that she would have done without. I'm not saying she only did it because of Dragontalk. She absolutely would have done it with or without us, but it's just so much fun to see people grow in their community and like in the work that they're doing. And I like that Greg and I get to be a small part of that journey.
Yeah, that's totally fantastic.
And I loved going back and listening to them because I had this weird, strange out of body experience, and I think Shelley did too, where there would be a conversation happening, and we'd be listening to it, and I, in my head, would make a joke, be like, "Oh, this is so funny! I would have said this," and then like a half second later, I would hear myself make the same joke that I had. So I hadn't grown up at all. I was making, poop and fart jokes in my head in a very similar way, and I got such a kick out of that we would just laugh. And be somewhat the same people, even, years removed and, not even situation removed. I still was that same dork.
So my Pocket Cast archive, helped me to, I was like, when did I come in? And I'm like, oh, I actually know exactly when I came in. It was around episode 92 was one of the first ones I listened to. And then I think like over the years, it's kind of clearly it's morphed and evolved in little ways, but you've kind of swept back through it. How do you feel it's changed, or how do you feel it has stayed the same?
I think the general feeling has always stayed the same, which was just me and Shelley wanting to chat with someone interesting and get to hear their story. But it has leveled up as far as, actually when we started, we weren't doing call-ins. We were only being able to record with people physically in the same location in Renton, Washington, which was difficult to sometimes do. And it was, that was very early on. If we're going to get guests that are outside of our sphere and want to bring audience members in, we're going to have to develop the way to do that. I remember it actually being quite difficult for our sound engineer to be like, all right, well, we got to get the sound in your ears, but it's also on the thing. And we leveled up in that way. And then I think one thing that certainly changed along the way, and it's something I highlight in the book with the, history of the community that starts off in the book, as well as the essay with Tanya DePass, which was, she was just very enlightening to me as a Black woman, and her being very open about her struggles with the game. It was not always a pleasant experience when she had played D&D, and she was very upfront about that. And she wasn't bringing that up in any kind of damning way. It was just like, here are my experiences. And those, that connection just really spoke to me. And I was like, I can't change the world. I can't change, inherent racism that's everywhere out there, but I can at least try to lift up people from different backgrounds, people with different colored skin, from different sexual orientations, and make them feel as welcome as possible and see themselves in the game. It's something that the designers and the art directors for D&D 5th edition in 2014 made a conscious effort to do by showcasing in the artwork and in the text that everybody can play this game and everybody feels welcome, regardless of how they identify. And so we kind of just melded those kind of two ideas, one that came from the D&D team, and one that was inspired by Tanya's honesty. And I was just like, I want to do that. I want to highlight as many Black creators who are making stuff in this space. I want to highlight people who may not have seen themselves as D&D players now. And I think that's the one big thing that I think has shifted for me over this whole lifespan.
Obviously, there's been lots of recurring segments. I'd love to hear a few name checks of some of your favorites over the years. Some have faded away. Some have, are still around. But it's always fun to kind of listen in and be like, what are we going to get this week?
I mean, very self-serving, but I really like the How to DM segment because I have actually learned so much, and it has motivated me to actually be a DM now. So talking to dungeon masters is one of my favorite things. There's so much creativity. There's so much passion there. I just have the utmost respect for dungeon masters in the amount of work they do to give everyone a good time. So I think that is one of my favorite segments. I also am really enjoying the Meet Your Monster segment. Especially Mackenzie and Dan are just so much fun to talk to. Mackenzie gets so excited about these gross little monsters.
She really does.
And she just makes them all seem like, oh, they're just cute little babies. And I think that Dan Dillon does amazing voice impressions for monsters. So I have to give him a shout out for that too.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the whole idea for segments came with the idea of like, if we were going to be shifting more towards interviews and focus on creators and streamers, was like, well, let's give something for those more enfranchised D&D fans to basically the idea was that we would have something in each episode that would appeal to the largest number of D&D fans out there. And so I certainly loved Lore You Should Know. That was one of the first ones. I just get a kick out of speaking to both Chris Perkins and Matt Cernit about the deep dive into the Forgotten Realms. When I started, I was much more of a Greyhawk fan of as far as D&D settings go, and so I didn't know very much about Forgotten Realms, and so I wanted to use that to be like, all right, well, I'm the everyman. You tell me what's cool and exciting about this lore, and I think that really just that excitement and inquisitiveness that I had kind of came through. But I think my favorite segment now is our Drunky Two Shoes segment at the end of each episode.
Yeah, good point.
We were struggling trying to find a way to end each episode. We morphed our kind of call out, sign off language a bunch of times, and it was inspired by Shelley's perhaps reluctance to DM. And I was like, no, it's really just that easy. I'll do it right now. We'll do 5 minutes. And I'll show you just how much fun you can have with two people with very little prep time and improv together. And I think the combination of both the How to DM segments that you've been doing, Shelley, as well as just week in and week out, just seeing me flounder and make up stuff on the fly, but
you
also
don't
having
flounder.
Well, I am floundering in my head, and then it comes out as hopefully something that makes a through line and makes sense to people. And I think that's been just really fun. It's part of the episode that I look forward to the most now.
And I will say it is true that you do make it look attainable and easy. Because I know that you don't prep for those, because almost every episode we're like, wait, what happened last week? Where are we again? Like, he doesn't know anything more than I do but you do it. And I think that's amazing. I love it.
I was actually going to ask a bit about the How to DM thing, so I'll sort of jump into that, because it feels like, again, it's kind of one of those journeys of the show, earlier on, it was definitely that sense where you were like, oh, that's just not a thing I do. And so have you had kind of feedback from listeners about how it's actually, listening to you kind of contemplate it and then, start to do a few sessions and sharing those stories about those first experiences, DMing for some kids and things like, have people kind of felt like they've been encouraged as well?
I think, yes, I have actually heard from people that said, you are inspiring me to do this, maybe because you're so scared and yet you did it. And I'm not quite that scared, so I think I should probably do it. I have also heard from people that are really excited about the segments we do that are about kids, which is very exciting to me, because there are a lot of adults out there that want to introduce kids to this game, and I can't think of anything better to do for a kid than, I mean, obviously clothe them, feed them, give them love and support, but also please give them Dungeons and Dragons. They need that as well.
Maslow's hierarchy of needs is like, food,
Mazzanoble's
shelter, D&D is the biggest part of that pyramid.
That's right. Yeah, it's foundational.
Yes, it is.
I'd love to touch on some of the event things that you've done, obviously, because that's then, it's appeared throughout the Dragontalk, the lead up to those events and things. Like I got to go to the Avernus event in LA. I also wrote an article for one of the newspapers over here about it. So, that it was an amazing experience. But
it's Greg's baby.
I think, Greg, you kind of your theater background, like how great was it for you to kind of get to pull that off as part of this whole world of D&D?
It was super gratifying. I loved being able to meld that kind of showman feel of everything I learned through entertainment and bring it to bear for all the events. Like it was a growth there too as well, going from like D&D Live at Meltdown, which was in 2016, and the back of Meltdown Comics in LA. RIP, doesn't exist anymore. And then, going to the Stream of Annihilation in Seattle, bringing people together for the first time. I think I even mentioned in the book that's when like Matt Mercer met the guys from Acquisitions Incorporated and for the first time, and everyone was just kind of like, that Spider-Man meme where they're all pointing at each other, being like, oh, I know you. And everybody was just so excited to be in the same room together and couldn't imagine that their lives had developed to that event. And then to top that with the Stream of Many Eyes, building the actual city streets of Waterdeep in that studio, with stunt performers, with people, just embodying their D&D characters. It's one of the highlights of my life, honestly. Like and I say in the book, like I actually cried tears of just joy by seeing this all happen in front of me. And it was, as you said, it was just like this great combination of everything that I love. The meta nature of gaming and theater, as well as performance and camaraderie. I think it was one really important part of that thing. Even though there were hundreds of people working on that event, everybody was excited to be there to support the community and lift it up. And that was felt throughout. And so the fact that there wasn't any bad actors, or there wasn't any really even negative stories out of that weekend, just made me feel extremely like, oh gosh, we're doing the right thing. This is exciting. And it felt like the cusp onto, D&D growing and building even more. And so, that was really great. And I loved being able to highlight, Tanya and the Rivals of Waterdeep at that event. Many of them had not played D&D together until they were on stage, with tens of thousands of people watching them. And to have that work and, be seamless and have the experience that they did, to be inspired to continue to, keep going with that storyline and with the, that shifting cast, like that is also just really gratifying. And I'm really proud of that event. And then Descent was really great as well.
Yeah. And look, I was, I know it became a notorious moment. I was sitting next to Chris Funk from the Decemberists at that table when he managed to do massive damage to the entire room at the epic.
That's amazing. Yeah. So you were there witness to, I think Chris Lindsay has said this, and I think I'll just underline it as well. But like, that's the most D&D damage that has ever occurred ever, but due to one person's decision, since I think everybody took 3d10 damage in the room because of that decision, something like that.
I think it was even bigger than that. Yeah, I think it might have been like half their hit points.
Yeah, so we're talking more than 1,000, 2,000, thousands of damage was dealt by Chris just being like, yeah, sure, I'll do that.
Yeah. And it's like, he didn't even negotiate. That was kind of, I think, where everyone was like, wait, you just took the first offer?
The deal with the devil. It's like, in the name, the idioms don't do that. And he was like, no, I'm doing it.
Yeah.
Isn't this the same event where the power went out because like a balloon got caught in the power lines?
That is, yes. In the middle of a live stream.
In the middle of a live stream, the power went right out.
And that was a really, were you you were in the room when that happened, James?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, imagine everyone being excited, watching. I think Chris Perkins was DMing at the time, and then blackness, and just emergency lights went off, and having to deal with the show still wanting to go on. And that was, I think, one of my favorite moments of that whole weekend too, because everybody was just in the room. There was no audience other than the people sitting in the seats. And then it just became like a little bit of a chat session between the audience and the people on stage for like 20 minutes before the power came back on and the stream resumed.
It was amazing. So obviously then, COVID happens, these epic events kind of have to go away, but clearly everything shifted into this kind of digital space. What do you think it is about D&D that actually meant that, obviously there was panic stations, I'm sure, for a while there, but then actually, in so many ways, it felt like the game really found sort of a whole new way to think about itself, and the fact that it actually still worked in so many ways, regardless of whether people are in a room together or were doing it online.
Yeah. I mean, there's how many Zoom happy hours can you do? Like early on, it was just like, oh, this is not, I can't do this anymore. But you do want to be connected to people. You still need to have that social connection more than ever. Plus a wonderful escape. And for one thing, so many people took their games online. They were just like, we're not willing to give up this weekly, monthly, whatever. So we're going to be online. For I think another group of people, they were looking for activities to do together and to stay connected with people when they got sick of those Zoom happy hours in D&D or maybe other types of gaming. I remember like trivia being really popular for a while. But D&D, gave people a reason to get together every week and have something to do. And I think also for other people, we just had more time. And for a lot of people who are like, oh, I really wish, I want to get back into D&D, or I wish I could learn how to play D&D. There was a lot of opportunity now for you to really sink into the player's handbook and create a character. Like, we all had time again. And I think a lot of people turned back to hobbies that gave them joy before, and there was really no reason not to. So in a way, it was really heartening to see how many people did turn to D&D or discovered D&D during that time, because I know what it does for me personally and emotionally, and to know that it was giving other people that human connection that was so desperately needed was really special.
Yeah, we used to Skype in a friend remotely in, like, I think it was back in 2007 when we played a 3rd edition game together that, he'd moved into a different town. My kids came to know him as Uncle Rom, the computer head, because we set up like an iMac at one end of the table. So it was just, there's Rom on the computer at the end of the table. But it's sort of funny how, I guess, that was kind of so awkward at the time. Whereas, I'm sure for plenty of people it was like, it's too hard. But then suddenly we did all sort of stop and think, hang on, what's the alternative? Like, let's just get together and let's make it work.
Yeah. Exactly.
And everybody had, or, had the push to get into video conferencing at all, right? Like, so there was certainly, it existed. We were using Skype to record, but I don't think we even used video when we did that, when we called in people. Because most people didn't know how to use it, and most people didn't have a webcam and weren't really kind of savvy enough with it. And so for everyone to be able to be, to learn that process and have it be part of their daily routine, it wasn't a step too far to be able to be like, all right, I can do this for leisure as well. And I think that, we had some data that before the pandemic, it was like 20% people were playing online, and 80% people were in person. And then, 2020 and 2021, that was reversed. It was 80-20 the other way. I don't think, it's probably normalized a little bit now, but it's still, most people prefer, because you don't have to commute. As a dungeon master, you don't have to have a big bag of books and miniatures that you have to lug with you.
I know, I live quite a distance from all my old friends from uni that I used to play with a lot. And it was that trigger for us to go, well, we've got no excuse, really. Like, we're all going to be here on Sunday nights. Like, we're all in our houses. Let's get a game going again. It was pretty great. And clearly all these kind of tool sets had also been already emerging. So, I guess, D&D is kind of already been slowly embracing it. I mean, we know, Wizards has recently bought D&D Beyond. Clearly, we know that there's a great future for this game as both, the traditional tabletop experience and then being able to play online and everything from the Discords to the social medias. Kind of, it feels like actually, that again, that community and the storytelling ideas are so fundamental, but actually it works beautifully across all these digital formats too, right?
For sure, yeah. Right. And Dragontalk itself had to go online. I think we're dark for maybe 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks. On the third week, we might have been like, hey, let's just put a microphone up and see if we can make this work still. And, we've been recording from home ever since. Like, it's been able to make that possible. And I'm really thankful. And I think even I mentioned in the book when we talked to Dave Walters, he was one of the first interviews that we did when we had come back from that little bit of a hiatus in March 2020. And he was the one where we were a little bit like, oh, maybe we won't do this. I don't know. We'll see. And he was like, no, you're doing a service just by being yourselves, by still being normal, by still having these D&D focused conversations. It allows people to have some normalcy in their life and have something to look forward to still. And that was, I needed to hear that at that moment. And it was really, it was a moment where again, Dave just lifted us up in the moment that we needed it.
He is a wonderful human.
Totally.
Just heading into kind of the wrap up, I'm curious, do you still get asked, but why play D&D when I have video games? Like, or has kind of that era passed in a sense, given everything that's happened over the last 10 years?
I don't so much get the because I play video games, but I will hear the but why would you play D&D? Or just like, what is D&D? Why would someone like, or I guess a lot of people just assume, like I did, that if you're not super into fantasy and video games or whatever, then you're not going to like D&D. And that's so false. So I have absolutely had conversations with people explaining all of the amazing benefits that you get from playing a game like Dungeons and Dragons and how much fun it is. And like, no, you actually don't have to know a million rules to get started. You can literally just start and somebody will tell you when to pick up a die and what to roll and what to add. And then you're off and running. And that is it. You don't even need to create a character, although you will want to after you play your first game. And that's pretty easy to do as well on D&D Beyond. But you can also there's pre-generated characters out there. The starter set comes with them. They're available on our website. You just need your imagination. And that is it. So I have converted a few people to at least giving it a try. So we'll see. We'll see if they continue.
I don't get that question anymore. What I get more is like, how do I get into it? Like, how do I start playing D&D? It's such a shift from what it was 20 years ago, 30 years. Even when we started in 2015, there was still remnants of that resistance that Shelley was talking about. But now that seems to be completely swept away, and people are just like, how do I get my kid into doing it? How do I convince my significant other that they want to join and jump in? And it's more about removing the barriers to entry rather than there being, building walls.
Look, my journey with the game goes back to 1987. So I was, in, I guess, what's the American, like 7th grade, I guess. Okay. That was the, and so I had the Red Box kind of series and then had some first edition stuff and then started getting into second edition was pretty much right around that time. So, but, we had a friend at school who got handed that little Dark Dungeons booklet that was kind of notorious from that era. So like, it's just that weird thing. It's thankfully entered a whole different world of.
And you know what was I've mentioned this a couple of times, but I spoke to a person who is going to a journalist school or taking a journalism class, and they were interviewing me. Sometimes they reach out because they have a assignment and they want to do something fun and they want to talk about D&D. And somehow that email gets to me. So it's amazing to me whenever it does. And I agreed to do the phone interview, and it was a wonderful conversation, really, really great questions. But there was one question near the end of the conversation that was like, all right, so how can you tell me why everywhere I go on campus, people are playing D&D? And I was like, oh, what? Like, that's really what's happening right now. That was very different from my college experience, where it was, tucked into the corner, or, only in individual dorm rooms, if that. Like I didn't even know sometimes if that much was occurring. And so I think the younger people who are, able to get into this game are, because of all the connection stuff that we mentioned. And also it's just cool right now. People really enjoy this excuse to get together and play, maybe because of all the video games that they have been able to play, that has rails, that has this very, even in a game like Skyrim that feels open world, there is, limits to what you can do. And so but there's that desire to want to do anything. And I think D&D provides that ultimate imagination, exploration that you can do with your friends in a cooperative way, which is also different from a lot of video games out there. There's almost always a competitive aspect to video game play. And so being able to have a common goal with most of your friends around the table, while also having snacks and, being able to have libations and all that, like, I think that just makes this a perfect storm of things for right now. And like I said, the barriers are down because of things like Dragontalk, because of streaming, because of the success of audio play podcasts. Like, people, it's demystified so much that people feel like that they can just get into it so much easier now. And it's hopefully because of those young people that I did not know on college campuses that we're playing, it's going to have continue to have a really healthy, lot more dungeon masters out there to be able to run games for me, which selfishly I'm excited about.
Yes, fantastic. Finally.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, look, I've got a couple of silly questions as part of wrapping up. Okay. If each of you could invite anyone to a D&D session, so it's like the dinner party question. If you can invite anybody to a D&D session, alive or dead, who would it be?
Ooh, alive or dead?
And what class would they play?
I would like to invite Joan Rivers. I love her.
She would be spectacular.
I think she'd be a bard. I mean, what else?
Yeah.
Yes.
That makes sense.
She would use vicious mockery every
vicious mockery all day long.
Turn.
All day, every turn.
Cause psychic damage to everybody at the table. That's so amazing.
Dress to impress.
I would probably do J.R.R. Tolkien. I don't know how he would be a good player or not. Maybe he would be a cleric because of his faith. But I would love to have him be drawing the maps, because I think that's, and I mentioned in the book with Devin Rue and her skills as a cartographer, how magical I think maps are. It's the one thing that is the same for your players. It's the same as for the characters. It's the same for the dungeon master. It's a physical object that transcends each meta layer of playing D&D. And I have always been transported by his maps, and I would love for him to, be a cleric around the table and maybe draw some amazing overland maps that I would then hoard and cherish and sell for lots of money afterwards.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So this is a Tolkien original. I mean, yeah,
right. He just doodled it while we were slaying the dragon.
All right, I've got some dynamic duos, and I want you to decide who's who. Okay, so we'll start with an easy one: Daryl and Drunky.
Well, I mean, I'm clearly Daryl.
I'm absolutely Drunky on so many levels. So many.
Scooby and Shaggy.
I'm Shaggy.
Yeah. Ruh-roh.
You're a dog lover. I mean, that does make sense that you would.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And you do more voices. Yeah. That's true. Yeah.
Yep.
Luke and Yoda.
Oh, I mean,
because they're both cool, but I mean,
I gotta go. I think you might be Yoda, Greg, because you've taught me so much.
I think only in the dungeon mastering, but yes, that is true. Yeah, I think that works, as well as you being like, no, I'm the reluctant hero. I won't do it. Okay, I will.
Oh no.
I know you're a Star Trek fan, so Spock and Kirk.
Ooh.
You have to take this one.
I think I'm a Spock. I think Shelley's a Kirk.
I don't. They are the same person to me. I'm
I
sorry.
only think of it because of the way you play Drunky as being like the impetuous, like chaos maker.
Yeah.
I feel like Kirk is more the chaos maker, and then so
Spock cleans up the
that
mess.
aspect fits.
Okay.
Yeah. Elminster and Mordenkainen. Thought I'd better throw in a D&D one.
Right? What about Tasha? Can we throw Tasha in that mix as well?
Well, then we're both going to want to be Tasha.
I know. I really do want to be Tasha.
We just want. Can Tasha be our answer to that? Because
Tasha and Baba Yaga.
We want to be. Oh, I would be Baba Yaga.
You'll be the mother, and I'll be the following in your footsteps. All right. Yeah, I can see that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sure.
Brilliant. Okay. One last thing. Yeah. How did Chris Perkins and Jeremy Crawford turn out to be so lovely, or is secretly one of them a tyrant behind the scenes?
They are both so lovely.
They are both lovely.
That passion that you hear in those segments when we used to do them, as well as in the videos that they do with Todd Kenrick now, like that is just how they are in the office. They are just absolute fans and stewards of this game, and that's the way they really think about it. Is they're oddly humble as well. So it's really wonderful, and it's actually one of the few things I miss about being in the office every day is not necessarily talking to them, because I didn't talk to them on a daily basis, but just hearing their creativity around in the office was just invigorating. And so they're wonderful.
Fantastic. Now, give us a quick rundown for listeners who are thinking, hey, I better go and check out this book. What are people going to find, learn about the game, learn about the meaning of life, all that jazz?
You will learn all of those things. The book is called Welcome to Dragontalk, Inspiring Conversations About Dungeons and Dragons and the People Who Love to Play It. So even if you haven't listened to Dragontalk, even if you haven't really even played D&D, I think you will find this book to be interesting and entertaining in the sense that you're learning about people that you have potentially heard of, that you have potentially seen in movies or were making movies that you have enjoyed. Enjoying their cosplay, enjoying them on streams, enjoying the maps that they create. You will enjoy hearing about why this game is so important to them. And I think enjoy seeing how diverse this community truly is and how all of these people from all different backgrounds can find this game to be something that has really impacted their lives, and then learn a little bit about why Greg and I felt so connected as well to those stories. You also get a really interesting behind the scenes history of the D&D community that Greg wrote that is really great. A little bit about how this podcast was made, and you'll be reading that and think, I can't believe they did this.
We've lasted almost 400 episodes.
Like, how did they actually continue this? And then a little bit about what your next steps could be in your journey if you haven't learned how to play D&D and now you want to, or how you can introduce other people to D&D, which is also very important.
Fantastic. What a perfect rundown.
Yeah.
Greg, Shelley, thank you so much for your time and coming on to Byteside.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. And just to throw out there that the book, Welcome to Dragontalk, is coming out on December 5th officially, but you can pre-order it now on the University of Iowa Press website at your local retailer. We love to support all the local bookshops in the area. So if you do go into them and ask for this book, they can order it for you, and then maybe ask to put a couple other copies on the shelf for other people to browse in and come and see it. Because like Shelley was saying, I think it is a good guide for people who may have maybe, just starting playing, or maybe want to get into, or at least just understand why the answer to that question that kid asked me for journalism, but like why so many people are playing it right now. I think this book can explain that and hopefully make you want to take those next steps to setting up a group or joining one in your local community, because it is becoming a worldwide game and pastime that so many people are getting into. A phenomenon.
Yep. I have like all my kind of bits and pieces.
Nice.
It's awkward when I'm looking at my own reversed version of my image.
There's so many of them.
There's all my bits and pieces there. It's all very fun. I love it.
Beautiful.
Thank you both again so much. Have a great day. I'm like afternoon. whatever it is, time zones.
Barely
in the
have to know.
future, in the past, it doesn't matter.
I know.
Thank you so much. This was awesome.
Thank you.